Rationality and life. The meaning of life is the eternal theme of human meditation. All philosophical systems, all religious teachings strive to find and provide the answer to this question. Some say the meaning of life lies in service, in the surrender of self through self-sacrifice, in the sacrifice of everything, even life itself. However, this is a very poor interpretation of the purpose behind sacrifice. Others declare that the meaning of life lies in the delight of it. You only live once, relieved against the expectation and final horror of death. Some again postulate that the meaning of life is perfection, the creation of a better future beyond the grave, or in future lives for ourselves. Treating life and karma as a bank balance where debits and credits are stored on some mythical ledger. Still others believe the meaning of life lies in the approach to non-existence. Others, that the meaning of life is in the perfection of the race and in the organization of life on Earth. There are also those who deny the possibility of even attempting to know its meaning, relegating everything to chaos theory and positivism, or the big empty. The problem with all of these explanations lies in the fact that they attempt to discover the meaning of life outside of itself, either in the future of humanity or in some problematic existence beyond the grave. Even in the evolution of the ego throughout many successive incarnations, but always in something outside of the present life of man. If instead of speculating about it, people would simply look within themselves, they would then see that in reality the meaning of life is not after all so obscure. It consists of knowledge. All life, through its facts, events and incidents, excitements or attractions, inevitably leads to the knowing of something. All life experience is knowledge, and all experience gained is never wasted. The most powerful emotion in humankind is a yearning towards the unknown. Even in love, the most powerful of all attractions to which everything is sacrificed, lies this yearning toward the unknown, toward the new, curiosity. The Persian poet-philosopher, Al-Ghazali says in his book, The Alchemy of Happiness, published during 1873, the highest function of man's soul is the perception of truth. In the beginning of this discourse we noted that psychic life and the world were recognized as existing. This can now be expanded further into, the world, being everything that exists, and, psychic life, the realization of existence. People realize their existence and the existence of the world, of which they form part. Their relation to themselves and to the world is called knowledge. The expansion or deepening of these relations to themselves and to the world are the expansion of knowledge. All the soul properties of humankind and all the elements of their psyche, sensations, perceptions, concepts, ideas, judgments, reasonings, feelings, emotions and even creation, all of these are the instruments of knowledge which the I possesses. Feelings, from the simplest of emotions right to the most complex, such as aesthetic, religious and moral emotions including creation, from the creations of a savage making a stone hatchet right up to the creations of Mozart, Einstein or Beethoven, all of these are means of knowledge. Only to our narrow human view do they appear to serve some other purpose, such as the preservation of life, the construction of something tangible, or simply for pleasure. In reality all of this is conducive to knowledge. Evolutionist followers of Darwin believe that the struggle for existence, and the selection of the fittest created the mind and feelings of contemporary man, that mind and feelings serve life itself, preserving the life of separate individuals and of the species as a whole, that beyond this they have no meaning in themselves. It is possible to answer this with the same arguments before advanced against the mechanical universe of positivism, namely that if rationality exists, then nothing exists except rationality. The struggle for existence and the survival of the fittest, if they truly play such a role in the creation of life, are also not merely accidents, but products of a mind concerning which we do not know, and they are conducive like everything else to knowledge. We do not realize and do not discern the presence of rationality in the phenomena and laws of nature. This happens because we study always not the whole, but the part, and do not divine that whole which we really desire to study. By studying the little finger of one hand we cannot discover man's reason. It is the same with our relation to nature, where we study always the tip of the bud. When we come to realize this and understand that every life is the manifestation of a part of some whole, then only the possibility of knowledge of that whole begins to open to us. In order to comprehend the rationality of any given whole, it is necessary to understand the character of the whole and its function. Hence the function of man is knowledge. However, without understanding man as a whole, it is impossible to understand his function. To understand our psyche, the function of which is knowledge, it is first necessary to clear up our relation to life. Previously an attempt was made, a very artificial one founded upon an analogy with a world of two-dimensional beings, to define life as motion in a sphere higher in dimensionality in comparison with ours. From this standpoint, every separate life is as it were the manifestation, in our sphere, of a part of one of the rational entities of another sphere. These rationalities look in upon us as it were, in these lives that we see. When someone dies, one eye of the universe closes according to Fechner. Every separate life is a moment of the life of some great being, which lives in us and of which we form part. The life of every separate tree is a moment of the life of a being, species, or family. The rationalities of these higher beings do not exist independently of those lower lives. They are two sides of one and the same thing. Every single human psyche, in some other section of the world, may produce the illusion of many lives. This is difficult to illustrate by example, but if we take Hinton's spiral, passing through a plane and the point running in circles on that plane, then conceive the spiral as the psyche, the moving point of intersection of the said spiral with the plane would be life. This example illustrates a possible relation between psyche and life. To us, life and the psyche are different, separate from one another, because we are inept at seeing and unskilled when looking at things. This in turn depends upon the fact that it is very difficult for us to step outside the frames of our divisions. We see the life of a tree, of this tree, and if we are told that the life of a tree is the manifestation, in our plane of some psychic life, then we understand it in such a way that the life of this tree is the manifestation of the psychic life of this tree. But this is of course an absurdity resulting from three-dimensional thinking, our Euclidean mindset. The life of this tree is a manifestation of the psychic life of a species, or family, or perhaps even the psychic life of the entire vegetable kingdom. In exactly the same way, our separate lives are manifestations of some great rational entity. We find proof of this in the fact that our lives have no meaning at all aside from that process of acquiring knowledge performed by us. A thoughtful individual ceases to feel painfully the absence of meaning in their life only when they realizes this and begin to strive consciously for that which they strove unconsciously before. This process of acquiring knowledge, representing our function in the world, is performed not by the intellect only, but by our entire organism, by all the body, by all life, and by the life of human society, its organizations, its institutions, its collective, by all culture and by all civilization. By that which we know of humanity, and still more, by that which we do not as yet know. We acquire the knowledge of that which we deserve to know. If we declare with regard to the intellectual side of man that its purpose is knowledge that will evoke no doubts, then all would agree that the human intellect, together with everything subjected to its functions, is for the purpose of knowledge. Although often the faculty of knowledge is considered as serving only utilitarian ends. However, concerning the emotions of joy, sorrow, rage, fear, love, hatred, pride, compassion and jealousy, concerning the sense of beauty, aesthetic pleasure and artistic creation, concerning the moral sense, concerning all religious emotions of faith, hope and veneration, etc., concerning all human activity, things are not so clear. We usually do not see that all emotions and all human activity serve knowledge. How does fear, or love, or work serve knowledge? It seems to us that by emotions we feel and by work we create. Feeling and creation seem to us as something different from knowledge, and where work is concerned and the creative power of expression, we are inclined to think that they demand knowledge, and if they serve it, then they do so only indirectly. In the same way it is incomprehensible how religious emotions serve knowledge. Usually the emotional is opposed to the intellectual, heart to mind, and someplace cold reason or intellect above or against feelings, emotions and aesthetic pleasure. From these they then separate the moral senses, religious and spirituality. The misunderstanding here lies in the interpretation of the words intellect and emotion. Between intellect and emotion there is no sharp distinction. Intellect, considered as a whole, is also emotion. However, in everyday language and in conventional psychology, reason is contrasted with feeling. Will is considered as a separate and an independent faculty. Moralists consider moral feeling as entirely distinct from all of these. Religious practitioners consider spirituality as separate from faith. One often hears such expressions as reason mastered feelings, or mastered desire. The sense of duty mastered passion, spirituality mastered intellectuality, and faith conquered reason. All of these, however, are incorrect expressions of conversational psychology, just as incorrect are the expressions sunrise and sunset. In reality, within the soul of man nothing exists except emotions. The soul life of man is either a struggle or a harmonious adjustment between different emotions. The 17th century philosopher Benedict de Spinoza saw this clearly when he stated that emotion can be mastered only by another more powerful emotion and by nothing else. Reason, will, feeling, duty, faith, spirituality or some other emotion can conquer only by force of the emotional element contained within them. The ascetic who kills all desires and passions within himself, kills them by the desire for salvation. A man renouncing all the pleasures of the world renounces them because of the delight of sacrifice, of renunciation. A soldier dying at his post through his sense of duty or habit of obedience does so because the emotion of devotion or faithfulness is more powerful in him than all other things. A man whose moral sense prompts him to overcome passion in himself, does so because the moral sense, i.e. emotion, is more powerful than all his other feelings, other emotions. In substance all this is perfectly clear and simple, but it has become confused and confusing simply because people, in calling different degrees of one and the same thing by diverse names, began to see fundamental differences where there were only differences in degree. Will is the result of desires. We call that man strong-willed in whom the will proceeds on definite lines without turning aside. We call that man weak-willed in whom the line of will takes a meandering course, turning aside here or there under the influence of every new desire. This does not, however, mean that will and desire are something opposite. In fact, quite the reverse, they are one and the same thing, because the will is composed of desires. Reason cannot conquer feeling, because feeling can be conquered only by feeling. Reason can only give thought and images, evoking feelings which will conquer the feeling of a given moment. Spirituality is not opposed to intellectuality or emotionality, it is only their higher flight. Reason has no limits, only the human Euclidean mind, the mind devoid of emotions, is limited. But what then is reason? It is the inner aspect of any given being. In the earth's animal kingdom, in all animals lower than man, we see passive reason. But with the appearance of concepts, it becomes active and part of it begins to work as intellect. The animal is conscious through its sensation and emotions. Intellect is present in animus only in its embryonic state, as an emotion of curiosity, a pleasure of knowing. In man the growth of consciousness consists of the growth of the intellect and of the accompanying growth of higher emotions, aesthetic, religious and moral, which, according to the measures of their growth, become more and more intellectualized, while simultaneously with this the intellect is assimilating emotionally and ceasing to be cold, devoid of emotion. Thus spirituality is a fusion of the intellect with higher emotions. The intellect is spiritualized from emotions and the emotions are spiritualized from intellect. The functions of rational faculty are not limited, but seldom does the human intellect rise to its highest form. At the same time, it is incorrect to say that the highest form of human knowledge will not be intellectual, but of a different character only if this higher reason is unrestricted by logical concepts and by Euclidean modes of thought. We are likely to hear a great deal about this from the standpoint of mathematics, which in fact transcended the reasoning of logic a long time ago. However, it achieved this with the aid of intellect. A new order of receptivity grows in the soil of the intellect and of the higher emotions, but it is not created by them. A tree grows in the earth, but it is not created by the earth. A seed is necessary. This seed may be in the soul, or absent from it. When it is there, it can be cultivated or it can be choked. When it is not there, it is impossible to replace it with anything else. The soul, if it may be called a soul lacking that seed, i.e. inept to feel and reflect the world of the wondrous, will never put forth the living sprout and always reflect the phenomenal world, and that alone. At the present stage of our development, mankind comprehends many things by means of intellect, but at the same time we comprehend many things by means of our emotions. In no case are emotions simply organs of feeling for feeling's sake, they are all organs of knowledge. In every emotion man knows something that he could not know without its aid, something that he could know by no other emotion or by effort of the intellect. If we consider the emotional nature of man as self-contained, as serving life and not serving knowledge, then we shall understand its true content and significance. Emotions serve knowledge. There are things and relations that can be known only emotionally, and through a given emotion. To understand the psychology of play, it is necessary to experience the emotions of a player. To understand the psychology of the hunt, it is necessary to experience the emotions of the hunter. The psychology of a man in love is incomprehensible to him who is indifferent. The state of mind of Archimedes when he jumped out of the bathtub is incomprehensible to the state citizen, who would look upon such a performance as a sign of insanity. The feelings of a globe-trotter and explorer, delightedly breathing in the sea air and sweeping the wide horizon with their eyes, is incomprehensible to the sedentary stay-at-home couch potato. The feeling of a believer is incomprehensible to an unbeliever, and to a believer the feeling of an unbeliever is quite strange. People understand one another so imperfectly because they live always by different emotions, and when they do feel similar emotions simultaneously, then and only then do they understand one another. The proverbial philosophy of the people knows this very well. A full man does not understand a hungry one, a drunkard is no comrade for a sober man, one rogue recognizes another.